50% of them go out with the child, and a number of them go out shortly thereafter, so that when mother gets out there, she isn't going out to a stranger. And that's very important. You see a very strong bonding. The one study that's been made recently, follow-up, was of the young mothers who had babies here during the year 81, 82. And they found that close to 80% of them were living with the baby when they got out, even though they may not be living with the rest of their children. It's difficult for them to find housing for 3 or 4 or 5 children, but they have, the closeness to the baby has kept them together. This is a situation where you don't have better options. I think when you consider where many of these children will go if they aren't here, it's a very, very good option, and it's one that they deserve. To a baby from birth to 1 year, what this building is for has no significance at all. We had a wonderful woman here named Lila who had a little baby here, and she always used to say, "My baby ain't in prison, my baby with her mama." And that's exactly what it is. So to make the prison issue about a baby is silly. The baby is in a bright, colorful, clean, warm place with mother there to love it all the time and to feed it and to let it know that it's loved.
I've been in another prison, another county jail before coming here, and the visiting that they have, or visiting facilities that they have available, are not very, they're not conducive for a mother-child relationship. You either have to be separated by glass with no touching, or you have to be forced to sit on either sides of the table, only touching fingertips. You're allowed to embrace your child once as they leave, and once when they come in. Here, you're free to walk around just about with your child and come in the children's center. If you feel like rolling around on the carpet, just getting very silly, you can. Right now, I'm going through sort of a crisis with my children, particularly my daughter. Since I've been in prison the past 3 years, I've had a lot of tragedy. I had 2 brothers murdered, and my husband recently. My daughter doesn't know this.
He's been murdered recently?
Last week. Friday, I have to deal with the problem of how am I going to tell my daughter that her father is no longer here with us. I've never had to do this before. I've heard other people saying, I have this, I don't know whether to tell them or not to tell them, but it's something she has to be made aware of. And without this children's center, I don't think it would be possible. Just a dull, drab visiting room with a table or maybe glass separating us.
Improved conditions and visiting arrangements for mothers inside Bedford Hills are largely due to the efforts of a nun. Her concern also extends to children beyond the prison walls, and she has pioneered an experiment in foster care.
One of the things that I was very appalled by were the conditions of some of the foster homes that the children go to. So we have 2 now, my mother's houses, and the children live there, and the sisters are the foster mothers. And we called it my mother's house so that when the children go to school and the teacher would say to you, "Where do you live?" you would say, "I live at my mother's house." And who takes care of you? My mother's friends.
I'm off this week and I'm very happy. You can tell I'm very happy. And so are you. You're very happy too, right?
2 teenagers struggling for independence and 2 very dependent babies make a challenging family for a team of nuns playing new roles as foster mothers.
You girls have volleyball this week?
Yeah.
Andy, what?
What do you say?
You say thank you?
Yeah.
Okay. Break it. No, I really don't think anybody could be as good as a mother. I think we're trying to do it, but the mother is 100% their mothers, and they look forward to seeing their mothers, and they want to see their mothers, and their mothers really have a special love. I think we're just trying to help them to adjust from when their mothers come out, and we're trying to make them as best we can, so that they'll be good, but their mothers are perfect. You want a cookie? When all 4 visit their moms, it's very difficult when they come home because all 4 of them are adjusting. And they act out in different kinds of ways. They don't want to eat, or they, you know, they're blue. They have just seen their mother, and so they come home. She gets very cranky. Amanda gets very cranky, and she comes and she clings to you. She's afraid you're going to leave her. And Nate puts a finger in her mouth. Jackie gets very quiet. Usually she doesn't say too much. And Pt3 gets very noisy. Okay, let's go. Ooh, 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 ooh. Okay, let's hold the book, all right? And turn it away like that.
maybe tomorrow you can look at it again, okay?
Give a little kiss to Mommy. Say thank you, Mommy. All right?
You want to give Mommy a kiss? Give her a kiss, okay? Oh. Say night-night, Mommy. There. Okay, want to put it away?
Want to say nighty-night? Nighty-night, give Chris a kiss. Okay, here's your bunny. Want to say nighty-night? Want to say nighty-night to Mommy?
While baby Nate settles down to sleep, only an hour away, behind the razor wire, her mother.
Well, it was sad, but I knew that I was fortunate. I was going to see her twice a week, so therefore it wasn't as bad for me as it would have been for another mother. And I know she's well taken care of, and the sisters there are very good to her, and I know they care about her and they love her, and they always keep it in her mind, Mommy.
Here, okay, here, take them out of here. Well, see, in my childhood, I grew up without a mother, basically. My mother and my father were separated when I was like 8 years old. And psychologically, I blocked out everything from 8 years down. I don't remember anything about my mother. I don't remember anything about her, even though I know I should, but I don't. I just like blocked my mother totally out of my memory. My mother had went away, separated from my father. She didn't even separate. She just one night she wanted to go, so she left my father with 5 children. And she didn't come back into our lives till about 7 years ago. And I didn't accept that, even though the rest of my sisters, they ran, oh, happy mommy's back, you know. I never ran to her like that because I felt that when I needed her, she wasn't there. When she came back, I was 17 years old. I didn't really need her then. My life was already messed up.
Many of the girls in Bedford Hills come from the ghettos of Harlem and other rundown quarters of New York City. Poverty has certainly placed them at a disadvantage. But are there other processes at work? John Bowlby insists that stable family life, particularly mother-child attachments, are essential for a stable society. Sister Roulet agrees.
We have inherited the sins of our fathers and our mothers. I think one of the tragedies of American history is slavery that we just seem to pass over, that when Lincoln freed the slaves, we were all so proud, but in the meantime, we forgot what we did to the slaves. The whole family system was broken, and you'll hear many Irish people say, well, when we came to America, we had no clothes and we had no money, and look at us today, and why can't the blacks do it? Well, when they came to America, they came with this whole family unit. And when we freed the blacks, many of them didn't even know where their brothers and their sisters were, no less their mothers or their fathers.
And is it possible that the prison system itself is part of yet another cycle of disadvantage?
Interesting point, certainly. Producing a cycle of delinquency because we take action in imprisoning women, therefore making it more likely that their children will grow up with some delinquent tendencies. That would require a great deal more thought than I suspect we have time for. I'm sure the courts will take into consideration the effect that the sentence of the court is going to have, not just on the person being sentenced, but on the families that are going to be affected by that sentence. Certainly, we have that very much in mind during the sentence, but I don't think the courts will be ignorant of it at the time of sentencing.
Whether by choice or necessity, more women are going out to work, leaving their children with other adults, the caretakers. These children, well cared for by qualified staff, may nonetheless be at risk. According to a British child psychiatrist, young children need the security of mother's care. Substitutes, however well-intentioned, cannot meet the child's overwhelming need to be safe with its mother. Not surprisingly, these views have incurred the wrath of many feminists. The psychiatrist, John Bowlby, is unrepentant.
There's no doubt in some quarters there's a lot of contempt, scorn on a woman who stays at home and does a job at home. So I think this is can sometimes be very unfair because a girl may really want to have a family and to settle down and to look after her children, look after her husband, and live what I would call the traditional family life, which is father earning mostly, mother earning on a minor scale. I mean, the fact that many mothers do part-time work or something or other, that's fine. Gives them a varied life. But this pressure to do a full-time job and get back as soon as possible after birth, I think can be very unfair to a girl and make life much more difficult than it need be.
There are households in Britain where children are being cared for only by men. There are single fathers who bring up children. We have studies of those children, and they look very like other children. I mean, there is nothing that they overwhelmingly lack in any way. There are probably more important differences in the lives of children than the fact that the principal caretaker is a man or a woman.
It's certainly not true in the animal world. There's no case where a father is just the same as a mother. And in such information as we have about humans, it's evident that fathers and mothers play different roles in a child's life. They're both very important. So I think this notion that mothers and fathers are interchangeable is just silly.
What bothers me about Bowlby, I think, is that the exclusive attention to that one relationship that detracts from other things, but also I think the point about the lives of women as mothers. I mean, he does come back to that issue again and again and again, that his desirable looker-after of children is a mother. And I think that's made a lot of women feel very guilty about going out to work, about putting their children in nurseries in ways they shouldn't have felt guilty. They should have seen those things as very positive, both for themselves and for their children.
The Kingsway Children's Centre in London looks after 30 or so youngsters while their mothers work. The staff here believe that the children benefit from the stimulus that group care can offer. The youngest child here is 6 weeks old. John Bowlby believes that they are all too young to be separated from mother for a working day.
Well, I think it's useful to talk about the first 5 years. The first 3 or 4 are particularly important. It doesn't mean to say that she can't have some assistance. I mean, a grandmother very frequently acts as an assistant, or perhaps an aunt, or perhaps some nice lady who comes in and looks after the child for part of the day. So there's everything to be said for assistance, but there's also everything to be said for mother being her own chief caregiver. She's in charge.
The Latchkey Club assembles, as it does every day, at the St George's Centre in Tunbridge Wells. Children whose parents are still at work when school finishes.
If this facility wasn't available, the parents who are working, especially the one-parent families, wouldn't be able to have a job. They would rely on the dole, if you like, and the children wouldn't have a place to play. And I would think in some circumstances, the children would probably be at home. They'd have to go home on their own. There wouldn't be anything else for them. Because we don't live in a society where granny is at home anymore, or auntie. So we are granny or auntie, if you like. And we try to have it an after-school club. We try to make it an after-school club, something of their own, that they can express what they feel.
Upstairs in the same building, the preschool generation is coming to the end of a nursery day. This is a typical group, struggling to cope with the growing demand.
We're registered to take children from birth to school age, but in effect the youngest we have would be about 18 months. Earlier than that we always refer on to childminders because we can't give one-to-one attention to them. And basically we provide full day care. We try and provide whatever goes on at home. We give mid-morning breaks and lunch and afternoon tea, and we try and keep them occupied and happy all day.
Well, at the beginning of last year I was divorced and I was put into a guest house because I didn't have nowhere else to go. As there was no cooking facilities or anything like that, the social services then put Victoria in here. And as time went on, the council did rehouse me. I've automatically carried on Victoria here, and it's marvellous. I mean, I was near to a nervous breakdown anyway. Victoria was under a psychologist at the time, so things, without them here, things would have been terrible. So, I mean, I'm very thankful to all the staff here.
I think it's disgusting. There is no facility for under fives at all. Kent has no day nurseries. It has no school nurseries, full stop. And there just is no provision for it at all. We get no funding from council, social services, anybody like that. It just isn't there.
How does Britain compare with other countries when it comes to daycare provisions for the young? At Columbia University in New York, we consulted a leading authority on the subject, Professor Sheila Kammerman.
In Britain, school begins for children at age 5. In the U.S., the prevailing pattern is age 6. So first of all, we're talking about a larger group of children who need some kind of care during the day. Second of all, in general in the United States and in many other industrialized countries, there has been a change in the concept of what is an important, good developmental experience for children when they're growing up. And by that I mean that increasingly for children who may be the only child or one of only 2 in a family, living in a neighborhood in which there are very few other young children, the opportunity to play with children in a group during the day requires that that child be in some form of group facility, not in their own home. So we see an enormous increase in the proportion of children aged 3, 4, and 5 in the United States who are in such preschool programs during the day, whether or not their mothers are working. And that's true in France, it's true in Belgium, it's true in many countries, because parents as well as professionals know that this is an important experience for children.
Who has the instrument that you shake to make noise?
Tambourine.
Tambourine you can shake to have noise, to make noise?
I think the relationship with the mother is very important, but I think it's very important that children establish relationships with other adults and other children at an early age, too. I was an only child up until the age of 5 1/2, and I don't think it was completely you know, a good thing for me. It made it hard when I started going to school to adjust to getting along with other kids. And I wanted, especially for her, to have, since she's our only child and may be our only one, for her to have experiences with other children from an early age. Sometimes she'll get right involved in something. Other times she wants to cling more, and one of the staff will come and you know, I'll hand them to Wilma or Matt or whoever. And they are very warm and very important people in her lives, and she talks about them at home and everything. And the people in this center are early childhood specialists. They have a great interest in young children. They go to conferences, they go to school to, you know, and get training and so on. So they're especially interested in creating a good environment for young children. And we, my wife and I, with all the anxieties we have connected with our work, would have a real hard time providing that all day for her in the way that they can here.
We know that the children who have the best and most secure relationships with their parents are the ones who are the most sociable when they get to nursery school, and vice versa. There is no evidence whatever that because children have been in a day nursery, they are better at socializing.
It's not necessary for a child to have only one significant person in his or her life for him to develop well. In fact, a child is probably much better off if that child is able to have several different people whom that child can depend on and have feelings for, and in no way does the availability of several nurturing, caretaking people mean that the child will think less or value less or love less his or her mother or father.
The 18th century philanthropist Thomas Coram gave his name to an institute in London which studies the needs of children. We asked the principal research officer, Peter Moss, if Britain was lagging behind the rest of the world in the provision of preschool daycare. And if we are backward in this respect, does it really matter?
I'm not certain what the answers are. I think the influence of people like John Bowlby on this are symptomatic rather than at the root of things. It may be something to do with particularly conservative social attitudes, but again, that doesn't seem a satisfactory basic explanation. So I don't know is the answer, and I think it's a very interesting question. Does it matter? It seems to me it must matter enormously, because it means that essentially we're wasting the talents of a large proportion of our population in terms of the workforce. We're excluding women from positions of influence and power. That means that people who are intimately involved in the upbringing of children are not in those positions, which I think is very worrying. Two worlds, if you like, two societies, a group of people bringing up young children, another group of people out in the public sector, in the world outside, doing other things. And I think that sort of segregation must be very worrying for any society trying to strike a right balance. I don't think it's particularly healthy for the mothers or indeed for children either.
One of the things that struck me last year, both in reading the newspaper in the United States but also in Britain, when Prince William was entered into nursery school when he was 3 years old, and when pictures were being shown in all of the major newspapers about this very special event, it was taken for granted that this was a perfectly appropriate and enriching and improving experience for this young prince. And yet at the same time, many of the groups that I spoke with in Britain felt that for the average child, such an experience in a program would somehow or other not be for the child's best interest.
All working mothers share a common problem, whether they work in a factory or travel the globe for their country. Who should care for their little ones? If you can afford one, you may look for a nanny. St Anne's College in Lewes, Sussex, trains young ladies to be qualified nannies. principal of the college is Denise Marsh.
Yes, the course at the college is for a 2-year course. We start each September and the girls work through that year and then the following consecutive year. During that year they study a number of different subjects on the theory side in college on 2 days per week, and then they go out for work experience on 3 days per week.
I just want you to pass him between you, if you will. Right, now let's go back to thinking about this united tie. We've mentioned that the word bonding means. Now, when the baby's born, what happens to make the baby separate from the mother?
The cord is cut.
The cord is cut, yes. And at that moment, we've severed the physical contact. But what we mustn't do, and what we must strive to use positively, is to keep the other bond, the bond that we can't see. We've cut the physical one, but we've got to keep this emotional bond. And if that emotional bond is not very strong, then we've got to do something to foster it.
Nannies leaving, again, you see, it's rather like divorce. People like to believe it doesn't matter, and children get over it and don't. It's not true, they don't. They don't get over it. They can be very unhappy at having lost the important person. It depends on their relations with their mothers and so on, but so nannies can be very important people. And of course, a classical example is Churchill. Now, Churchill's parents were wickedly neglectful, shockingly neglectful. If it hadn't been for his nanny, he wouldn't have been the man he was.
In a nanny situation, well, of course, they've got to become involved. I think they've also got to realise that the mother is the prime person there whom the child should have an attachment with, and they really are a substitute mother. But whilst the child is in their care, they have the responsibility, they have the care of the child, and they must do everything they possibly can. They need to be sensitive, and when it comes to moving on in their job, then I think that they don't just cut off from their charge. They still do continue their contact with the child. They send them birthday cards, they visit them if they can, so that there isn't this cut-off period when the child feels, well, Nanny didn't love me anyway because she's gone away. And that's the last thing that we want in any way to hurt a child.
As well as receiving a theoretical grounding in childcare, the student nanny has opportunities to come to grips with the real, live human infant. Charlotte spends 1 day a week at a nearby kindergarten.
Have you got some? Well, I'll put it in your cup for you, shall I? I just enjoy it, really. It's just something that I find suits me. I've tried lots of other things, but I think it's the best thing for me. From the age of about 1 to 5, I had various au pairs and nannies, and it was great. I remember it as being very happy times, and I learnt a lot. No! Well, this one hasn't got a name on, has it? So we'll keep it.
Amanda gains her practical experience working alongside a registered childminder.
I like looking after children. I've got 2 younger brothers and sisters. So I've always been surrounded by younger children. I've got patience.
You're only supposed to be registered for up to 2 children at any one time, which I think is enough, really. But you can take more children over school age. It's very easy for the children to get attached to you if you have the children for a full day, for a full week. If you add up the number of hours, sometimes that child is perhaps with you longer than with your mother. I think you've got to find a childminder and stick with it. I don't think you can have too many changes in the child's life. You know, ideally, if you're going to have them from a young baby, then to work right through.
Remember, his head is very wobbly at this stage. He hasn't got any control at this moment.
A fully trained nanny might seem to be the answer to a working mother's prayer. But the principal of this nanny's college recently became a mother herself.
Before I had Cecily, really, I thought that I was just going to be able to go straight back into the thick of work and be quite happy doing it. But unfortunately, she's rather changed my life. The complete pattern of the way I think and what I want to do has completely changed. I just find that I need to be with her. I still need work as well, but I find that the thought of leaving her all day with someone else is just too much. Now I have a nanny on a part-time basis. She's comes to work with me with Cecily. So consequently, on a Monday and a Friday, she comes with me from 11 o'clock till 3 o'clock, and we all work together. She is taken to another room and is looked after by the nanny, and I pop in and see her in between whatever I happen to be doing during the day, which suits me just fine. If I go away for a meeting, go up to London for a meeting, or out anywhere for a meeting, it means she just comes with me, and so does the nanny. Don't you, darling?
For those who can afford it, Junior King's School near Canterbury offers a traditional boarding school education. Fees are £4,600 a year.
A great many children enjoy boarding school from the age of 13, maybe from the age of 11. But when it comes down to children going to boarding school at the age of 6 and 8, they can be very unhappy, and it's not a good thing. And it sometimes leaves them in a rather shut-in, sullen mood. Again, some survive. It depends on the school, no doubt. It depends on the child. Depends particularly on the kind of relationship he's had with his parents beforehand.
They come in at the age of 8 and they leave us at the age of 13 and a half. Backgrounds, social backgrounds, have become much more widely diverse than before. There are a lot of parents, of course, who have not been to this sort of school themselves, but would like to spend their money giving their children this sort of start in life. There are some, of course, who have profited from this kind of education themselves and very much want their children to do this if they can possibly do so.
Yes, fairy tales, right. Do you know where he lived? Which country he lived in? Where did he live? Yes, Jane? No, he didn't live in Germany.
We have children from expatriates, from service families, and single parents. Yes, regrettably this is increasing, as it is, of course, all over the country.
Lovely stories, you must read them.
I think perhaps when you get a small boy who's having to come to board because his parents are separated, and they find it very difficult to sort of understand this. I think particularly when, you know, Mummy and Daddy have said, we are going to remain friends. You know, we're going to remain friends, but we're going to live apart. And coming into a strange environment. And even just going into a dormitory and all the noises and the strangeness of sharing. They may have had a room on their own and suddenly sharing it with sort of anything from 6 to 8 other boys.
I was really miserable for about a year and a half, and I just cried nights and stuff. But now my friends have made me happy here.
Terrible, terrible. I was crying all the time. And then now it's a lot better because I'm used to it. On the first letter I got, I just didn't feel like opening it.
Feeling a bit warm.
Has your brother been in to see you? The first night is all right. It's all exciting and new, and they just making friends and settling in. And then maybe the second and third night, once the lights have gone out and silence, I suppose they just their minds start to wander. Then we have a few sort of tears and a little homesickness, not too much. Then we go in and cheer them up and chat about various things, changing the subject, of course. And the other boys are always very good. We rely on them to help. 86 boys I have, my mum to the lot of them.
At first it's quite hard, the first few days, because you just think about your parents here. But then you get down to work and it's not that bad, you have your friends. But I guess the worst time is when you get a telephone call or a letter, because then you're thinking about your parents and everything. Sort of say, can I stay at home for a bit longer? And she says, well, you'd be better off at school to get a better education than to be at home.
And it's better if I come here because they're often being posted to other places. So if I stay at one school, then I don't have to go to different places all the time. I can make up new friends and things. So it's better. So he's always saying it's better to come here.
That's very clever. That's all because you say so.
It is very good indeed for boys to be away from their homes. It does develop independence of thought, of outlook, and also it surprisingly links the bond between them and their parents much more strongly, because they then have things which they have done themselves, whether it's learning a musical instrument, playing in a team, or in fact producing an artifact in pottery, which they can then show with enormous pride to their parents, and they're distinctly becoming an individual apart from their home, and this encourages enormous self-confidence.
We know that if mothers are able to look after children and give them plenty of affection and encouragement, as I say, that works. And we know that at a somewhat distant point, separations and changing mother figures and so on can be disastrous. Now, there may be something in between which we don't know, but if we want to play safe with mental health, we'll keep mothers and children, grandmothers if possible, aunts, fathers and so on, so that the child has a small, familiar group of people whom he knows and trusts and loves to grow up in.
Happy and contented children sitting down to food with friends. But these children have suffered severe emotional damage. In this residential situation, dedicated, trained staff are trying to heal the wounds. They're dealing with damage.
The children we work with are very angry, and they seek ways of expressing that anger. I think if I'm angry, I'll express my anger verbally. I'll express the anger in my facial expression, the tone of my voice, or my body language. The children here aren't quite sure and quite clear of what it is they're experiencing that we call anger. They communicate that anger in what we get very worried about in ways like breaking a window would be an expression of that anger. Defecating in my shoe would be an expression of that anger. And certainly, small animals are vulnerable to that anger. The sort of mice and men situation where Lenny's stroking the rabbit and the intention is to be affectionate to the rabbit but breaks the rabbit's neck. There's a danger of that sort of situation here, and the affection, love and hate are very close together, you see. And so we avoid having animals. Our experience has been that the animals are at risk. We do have as many as 7 dogs in here. Staff bring their dogs in, and we feel the dogs are able to look after themselves. And we are getting 2 cats because we feel that cats can spit and hiss and scratch and again look after themselves and teach the children respect for animals. all the behaviour, the gross behaviour we get is extremely irrational, difficult to understand, and the tendency is to want to react to that behaviour. So if we have somebody who's acting out in an extremely aggressive manner and in a potentially violent manner, if you're under stress and you're tired at that time, you soon discover in this work that you have a capacity for violence yourself, and you want to bring about a rationality of the situation by perhaps using force. And of course we must not do that, because then we become part of the vicious circle of abuse that these children are the result of.
When the relationship between mother and child is severely disrupted in the early years, long-term damage is sustained, which can lead to mental illness and delinquency. These are the conclusions of 50 years scientific inquiry by the British child psychiatrist John Bowlby.
Muffin, this side now. And then calm it.
I got into a lot of trouble 40 years ago, or when it was 30 years ago. I suggested that these things perhaps were not reversible. Now, perhaps they're not reversible. People don't like to believe this. It's strong medicine. But if they're not reversible, then they're not. Now, that's one statement. The other statement is that we know that given a great deal of very devoted patient care from one person who really mothers that child over a long period, that there is very great improvement. And this is a great relief. What we don't know is whether the improvement is 100% or only 90% or 80% or whatever. But anyway, it's a very great relief to know that something can be done. But the awful problem is to find sufficient loving substitute mothers to look after these damaged children, because initially it is an uphill job. And you're dealing with a very difficult child, and a child who is very unrewarding for a long period of time. It's a long haul.
Foster parents with the stamina and patience required are in short supply. And some children are so damaged that they need very special help. Help which is offered by the large family at the Caldecott community. Here in the Kent countryside, the community provides love and care to emotionally vulnerable and disturbed children between the ages of 4 and 18.
Virtually every child who now comes into the community seems to have experienced a whole background of abuse, physical, sexual, social, in terms of not being really able to manage themselves, and that therefore requires far more involvement of the adults in helping them to manage their own lives. And this we largely put back to the fact of what has happened, what has broken down within that first crucial 12, 14, 18 months of life.
Well, whatever has gone wrong in the past is probably going to scar them in some way. And even as adults, they're probably going to have that scar, and it's trying to help them to live with it, live through that experience or those experiences of their past, and help them to try and take their place in society as ordinary men and women.
At this Chinese evening, the whole community of 75 children and 75 staff can meet for a family party.
Much of the work of the community is preschool, is those normal social institutions, and that is why it so often happens that when they get into school and they find themselves faced with the normal social interaction with 20 other children, that very quickly the words are being used: this child is disruptive, this child is bizarre, this child is unmanageable, because simply they have not had the opportunity to develop the personal sort of inner controls that most children in normal families have between the age of 0 and 4 or 5 years.
One poor young boy who, by the time he was 8, had been through 14 changes of home. In other words, he'd been away from his mother, back to his mother, staying in foster homes meanwhile. 14 changes for any of us is a very difficult thing to live with. I don't think any adult could manage 14 changes in 8 years the way that boy had to face up to.
Lacton House is the community's custom-built unit for specially vulnerable children. Furniture is carefully chosen, colours are coordinated, meals are specially prepared, and, unlike the children in other parts of the community, they also have their education in the house.
So we've tried to create here an environment which is known in our profession as a therapeutic environment, and try to create a situation for these particular children to live in which is deinstitutionalized. And we believe that that environment helps the children feel valued and safe, and therefore that environment kind of helped us to hold the children. And it's also, to a great degree, compensatory to the sort of circumstances these children come from. We feel it's very important that children learn about reality. We help by going out shopping with the children, so they see food being bought, being purchased, actually being even budgeted for. And then we come back here and the children can help in the preparation of the meals, so that meals in this situation just don't arrive from nowhere, as they do in many institutions. The food, like the environment, has to be of high quality, has to be a balanced diet, has to be a colourful diet, has to be different textures. Eating then becomes a positive experience for children who very often in the past have had eating as a negative experience because it was unreliable.
We're dealing with children who've been deprived or had their development distorted in some way or other by their early life experiences. The kinds of deprivations may be physical in terms of an illness or having to be in incubator or something like that early on in life. They may be emotional in terms of parents not being able to cope with them. They may be the sort of problems which are much less easy to define, just general unhappiness. And then there are children who've been physically and sexually abused, and children who've gone from one foster home to another or in and out of care and have had very unsettled early life. The individual psychotherapy, which is where I'm involved, is on psychoanalytic lines. And the aim of seeing the children individually is to try and help them to understand not just what's happened to them, but maybe why it's happened and how they feel about it. I'm quite well aware that for many of them, the past cannot be changed, and the future is going to depend on what's happened to them in the past. But maybe I can help them to feel differently and experience the things that have happened to them in a different way, which is less damaging, less hurtful, less harmful in the long term.
Not this silly old rubbish.
Well, let's quickly get your writing done and then you'll be able to go on to your maths, won't you, James?
I want to go and do my old nice maths.
Let's just get a couple of sentences.
This is only rubbish.
It was felt that many of these children had experience of school which hadn't been successful, they hadn't been positive experiences. They had, and we have some children who are school phobic as a result of these experiences, very discouraged academically. And it was felt that we had to offer them a sense of security in pursuing their academic careers.
Richard, can you be quiet, please?
And so the school aspect of this building is part of the actual building, so the children we have don't actually go out to school, they go into school. And we have begun to think that, in a way, that's beneficial to begin with when the children come here. But when they reach an academic achievement which really suggests the next step is out of this building and should be going out to the local primary school, it creates difficulties because of just how safe it is for these children. And preferably now, looking back, I think it would have been a better design to have the building separate, even by 20 yards, so the children in the morning left the building they live in and went out to school across the grass.
Finished doing the main house.
You can have a bath in the morning, all right? Because you're far too tired tonight.
Hello.
But your feet still pong.
I know they don't.
Well, maybe we'll put some powder on them because they stink to high heaven.
I know they don't.
They do.
They don't.
I think when he first came to us, he was extremely emotionally damaged. His eating conveyed his emotional damage. He was unable to socialize with other children. He was extremely anxious, extremely angry. And we've worked very, very hard with James, and we have now got him to a situation where we're preparing him for long-term fostering towards adoption.
Right, do you want to drink this in bed and I'll read you? Have you got a book you want to read?
Yeah, the Jungle Book.
The Jungle Book. Again. All right. Go on then.
Well, he I think at a very early age, took on the responsibility for his mother. And so we saw a reversal of roles there, where he was needing his needs met. He suddenly was overwhelmed by a tremendous sense of meeting his mother's needs.
All right.
And when he actually came to Langton House at first, he had tremendous problems coping with not being there to look after Mum. Who would be looking after Mum? And James was 7 at this time.
Are you comfy?
Right. Mowgli. Mowgli.
Right. So he was like a little old man in a 7-year-old's body, and had never had the opportunity to play as a child and to experience life as a child. He was too preoccupied with the responsibilities that are more in line with an adult's life.
Why, it's a man cub, said Bagheera. Perhaps Mother Wolf will look after him. One day Bagheera came with some bad news. He told Mowgli.
Anna's my deputy, and I suppose really an outsider looking in, what you might see is a rather large family in that we've got 11 children here and lots of adults. And Anne and myself, I suppose, represent the mother and father of that family. And so with our younger children, Anne gets the opportunity in the flat, we have a flat within Langton House, to really mother the younger children who desperately need that quality of parenting.
Roger didn't like her.
We make enormous, some people would say unreasonable demands upon our staff. For instance, we're not prepared to have adults here. We're not prepared to work a week, which is roughly about 80 hours plus. We make this quite clear at the time of their appointment, because we cannot and will not reduce parenting with these children and support of these children down to a 30, 40-hour week warehousing, as exists within, usually within local authority structures. It's too important to us. So that must lead to, and does in many cases, to very deeply caring attachments.
Right,
now let's play from the beginning, and I'll play my part. Ready?
Be careful he doesn't pull you though. Really? Was he vicious? Who was vicious?
When Philip was 3, his mother left his father, and the only way that his father could manage Philip was to tie him to his pushchair. When he was found in that condition, he was suffering from malnutrition, which was manifested by the classic hot belly. He was filthy. He'd been sitting and sleeping in his own filth. Couldn't talk, could hardly walk. Was immediately removed from that situation and put into a foster situation where he slowly began to respond. And then at the age of 4 was adopted. Couldn't talk, would only say over and over again, "Mummy, mummy, 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 mummy." Had a fascination with everything that he touched. He would stand for long periods of time just stroking, for example, the chair or a piece of material, and also while doing this was masturbating all the time.
I think we all recognise now and accept the reality that within Philip there are signs that he has the capacity to be extremely dangerous. I mean, you know, I know he's come up to me and hugged me once or twice, genuinely pleased to see me, but within that hug I felt as I'd been being strangled.
He, on one occasion, almost killed a kitten. The kitten was saved just in the nick of time, but not long after that, he actually strangled a neighbour's 2 pet rabbits. And this culminated one evening where his father came in and so battered Philip that his mother had to open the front door and shout at Philip to run, just run.
I thought his mother was very astute earlier on when she felt his danger points was when he was hungry or tired. And I mean, my own experience tells me that for these children that have had enormous deprivation in that first year of life, it is really as though there's a hole inside them which they can never, where they can never be full.
The demands that these children make on the staff are considerable. And it's hardly surprising that they themselves seek care and reassurance, particularly the younger ones. Regular staff support group meetings provide an opportunity for problems to be shared and grievances aired.
You know, there was a situation and I was threatened with a knife, and it was pretty scary. Because I mean, he was a fairly small child, but it was just the fact that, this darling little thing was waving a knife at my throat.
I think all too often what happens is there's a crisis, say like a member of staff leaves, so you get new staff recruited quickly, and they're thrown really right into the deep end. And they shouldn't be doing that. I think it's quite dangerous. Because if you've got a child having a tantrum or something, you don't know how to restrain them properly or what to do.
Right.
Or you might find you get violent feelings coming out towards them.
Well, he sort of called me everything under the sun, you name it, he called me, and then started spitting at me. And then sort of went for me, punching me and kicking me. And I thought, well, what do I do? And I was really upset. It was sort of, what have I done to this child? And it's sort of, and then you think later, it's not me, he's trying to get back at society, through us. He's trying to hurt us.
What's happening there? Yes, but he's made Victoria look lovely.
Victoria, does anyone...
Some of the children find it impossible to express the hurt they feel.
Put it over.
Constructive play can offer a way in which these internal feelings can reach the surface.
Packed it up in her bed, haven't you?
Okay then, let's just pretend. I just want you to think that this is your world, all right? And you've all those objects there. You can just put whatever you want in here. Just build up your world. Just do what you want. And put the objects wherever you want to.
Danny can populate his landscape with a cast of colourful characters, commonplace or fantastic. He starts by constructing a secure area for the ponies, perhaps because he spends a lot of time in the stables in the community.
A bit of work with the ponies.
Do you?
You know I did, didn't you?
Yes, I did actually.
We could have that as someone's evil castle.
Evil castle?
Yeah. In a distance, we can put...
It's not long before one corner of Danny's world is filled by his evil castle and its soldiers.
Get 4 of these to guard his castle. Then 1 of them to guard his church. 1 each of them to guard him. Isn't it?
In the opposite corner, he builds a church with an army of priests to confront the forces of wickedness.
That's the thing. Ah, damn it. They could be the vulture's eggs.
The vulture's eggs.
If the staff learn more about Danny, it'll be helpful. But more important is Danny's own self-discovery, as he explores within himself the conflicts of good and evil.
Oh, that's quite some world, Danny. What do you reckon of that now?
So I suppose.
That's a good world.
Just like any other family, the children here have to leave home and fend for themselves. Chris Alexander tries to prepare them and then let go.
Obviously there are rules so that we can maintain the house and keep it running in an orderly fashion. But there is a lot more freedom here. Now we could, if you like, having adolescents say, well, no, you can't do this and you can't do that. But at some stage they've got to go out and test those boundaries for themselves, and it's far better they do it with our support, so that if they do mess things up, they do get in trouble, that we're here to sit down and talk to them and go through it and start again.
Wouldn't learn, just couldn't learn anything. Did you get into trouble or anything? Yeah, I got into trouble quite a bit.
I was living with my dad and my sister, and he couldn't really cope, so
things started falling apart.
Where was your mum?
She had moved away, started living with another bloke, so...
My mum and dad had split up when I was about a year and a half. And it was just, had a lot of problems at home.
He used to hit me and that sort of stuff.
Hit you a lot?
Now and again when he gets in his bad moods.
What did your mum used to do when he did that?